After a disastrous debate performance, the news media, which had been shamelessly gaslighting the public over Joe Biden's cognitive capacity for years, seemed to turn on the president in unison. Biden stuttered, stumbled, and bumbled his way through a grueling and painful 90 minutes during which he alternated between slurring his confused answers and staring into nowhere with his mouth agape. Examples of the president's cognitive decline have become so prevalent that journalists were forced to label any embarrassing videos of the geriatric commander-in-chief as cheap fakes in the hopes of shaming the public into ignoring the obvious. Despite this deep investment in running cover for Biden's senility in the past, anchors on networks like CNN and MSNBC spent their post-debate spin sessions speculating on the possibility that the elderly leader might need to step aside. This discussion was treated as a sudden revelation instead of acknowledging the self-evident fact. The Biden presidency was a scam from the start. The election of 2020 was probably the most contentious presidential result since 1876. The American people were asked to believe that Biden, who hid in his basement for much of the campaign, also won the most votes in the nation's history. The future president was in better shape back then, but it was still very clear that he was starting to lose the ability to recall key facts or engage in discussion for an extended period. Even in 2020, several pundits joked that they didn't care if Biden collapsed and was replaced after his election if he just kept Donald Trump out of the White House. The regime officials went out of their way to prevent Trump's re-election. They raised pandemic fears to an apocalyptic level, actively encouraged coordinated race riots across the nation, and radically transformed the voting process forever. Even if one doubts the more salacious claims of voter fraud, Molly Hemingway's excellent book Rigged lays out how tech CEOs, government actors, Democratic operatives, and the media openly colluded to defeat the incumbent president. An oligarchy installed Biden as president, never expecting him to actually fulfill the duties of office. Now, Biden admittedly started his term with at least some degree of awareness, but it's been clear for the last few years that he hasn't been running the show. The American people are completely unaware of who, in fact, is responsible for disastrous inflation, open borders, and endless foreign war, which is exactly how the ruling class likes it. Oligarchies prefer to avoid accountability, and Biden creates the perfect shield. An unspecified set of elites make decisions in the shadows, and then the shambling zombie of a president is wheeled onto the stage to read the teleprompter and take the heat. This weekend at Bernie's routine is a fantastic distraction. Ultimately, people want to blame whoever's in charge, but the only person in front of them is Joe Biden, who looks like he's drooling whenever he's not wandering off stage and falling down. Are you going to hold this guy accountable? No, even prosecutors who have looked at his crimes say no jury in the world would convict him because ultimately he's just mentally checked out. Now, none of this even remotely resembles the system outlined in Article 2 of the Constitution, but nobody seems to care. The corporate press praises how spry Biden looks and dismisses any contrary evidence as fake news. Conservative commentators, on the other hand, play endless videos of Biden wandering off stage after forgetting where he is, or misremembering key events in his past, including the death of his son, or talking about foreign leaders that have been dead for decades. But then those same conservative commentators still pretend that the president is responsible for his administration's decisions. While it's common for presidents to delegate significant tasks to advisors, it's clear that under Joe Biden, unelected bureaucrats and power brokers have completely captured the Oval Office. When it comes to public discourse, setting the frame is key. The frame of a discussion delineates its boundaries. While endless speculation and debate may fill that frame, the discussion is ultimately defined by the space the media has created to contain it. If you, as a journalist with at least a theoretical duty to hold the powerful accountable, had instead propped up an obvious fraud, how would you avoid the consequences? You see, people are highly sensitive to status, which in our modern world is conferred by credentials, wealth, and media visibility. Even when something is obvious, if the facts go against the narrative that power is advancing, people are scared to notice it. Everyone already knew that Biden was a zombie. We learned nothing new last week. The pressure was building inside the system to just say this obvious thing out loud. It was on the tip of everyone's tongue, but they still held it back, especially if they were on the left, because the narrative had not allowed them to say this. Power still did not want this to be obvious, and so everyone was collectively holding their breath. With his particularly embarrassing debate performance, however, the media gave people permission to acknowledge what was already clear. This permission acts as a pressure release valve, allowing all the pent-up discourse around the topic to fill the frame that the media had constructed. With the proper framing, the entire discussion shifted seamlessly from Biden is just fine, it's all fake news, to Biden is feeble, who should we replace him with? Speculation about whether and how Biden can be replaced, along with the pros and cons of each alternative candidate, now dominates the discourse. The event has become part process story and part reality television show. No one takes the time to acknowledge the more serious implications of this revelation. The Biden fiasco should make it clear that the elected president does not run the executive branch. This has probably been the case for a very long time, and it should have been evident as the entire deep state defied Trump. But now it's too obvious to ignore. An unaccountable oligarchy installed a senile fake president through a soft coup. Instead of grappling with this stunning truth, the media, both left and right, debate whether Gavin Newsom is too white to overtake Kamala Harris and run in Biden's place. The Biden presidency was always a sham, but Americans seem more interested in speculating on who will get the rose next rather than facing the reality that our political system is entirely fake. Thanks for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this video, go ahead and click like. If you haven't subscribed yet, now is a great time to do so. If you'd like to get these broadcasts as podcasts, make sure that you go ahead and subscribe to the Auron MacIntyre Show on your favorite podcast platform. And when you do, leave a rating or a review. It really helps with the algorithm magic. If you'd like to follow me on Twitter or Gab or Odyssey or Instagram or Rumble, the links to do all of that are down below in the description. If you'd like to pick up my new book, The Total State, you can of course do that on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, or even order it at your local bookstore. Give them some support. And of course, you can catch all of my shows and read all of my columns over at The Blaze. Thanks for watching, guys, and as always, I'll talk to you next time.